There is a new whistleblower who wants to draw attention to the amount of money that is wasted at Guantánamo Bay. A former Guantánamo Bay attorney has actually filed a federal whistleblower complaint claiming that the prison and military court are guilty of both gross financial waste and gross mismanagement. So let me give you the details on this, and also just a quick reminder that one of the things that was promised under Barack Obama was closing Guantánamo Bay. Yes. Obviously that didn't happen. There are 40 prisoners there today. And now I'm about to tell you how much we spend in federal taxpayer money on Guantánamo Bay. The US military court and prison at Guantánamo Bay, Cuba have cost more than $6 billion to operate since opening nearly 18 years ago, and still churn through more than $380 million a year, despite housing only 40 prisoners today. $380 million a year does not include the $60 million annual expense of operating Guantanamo's naval base or the salaries of military personnel, including the 1,800 guards overseeing the detention center's prisoners.
There are the 40 prisoners, 1,800 guards.
That's right.
I mean,
incredible.
So these are just some other figures I looked up. So there were 800 detainees in the history of Guantanamo. 500 were released under Bush, 197 under Obama, and there has been one person that's been convicted, because this was just a rounding up of brown Muslim people in the wake of 9/11, because again, as we've talked about throughout the show, our civil liberties were able to be completely decimated, and internationally they were just not even acknowledged. I mean, the idea of a quick and speedy trial, these 40 people have been there for what, 2 decades at this point, or I don't even know the specificities of these detainees, but they're certainly not receiving habeas corpus rights, right, or constitutional rights to a speedy trial. It's a human rights disaster, and once again, Obama sort of fought to close Guantanamo Bay when it was a central campaign promise that he ran on in 2008, and then the Senate blocked him, a Democratic majority Senate, by the way, and then he was unable to do it. He didn't really push for it. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to, I'm really happy that you mentioned that, because I want you all to just juxtapose how Obama handled that with how Trump would handle it if it was something that Trump wanted to do. What would Trump do?
Yeah, not bad.
He'd just close it. He'd be like, I'm signing in an executive order,
But Obama so fetishized procedure and the process and all of these BS and blah, blah, blah. I can't even do that, but you know what I'm trying to do. Yes. Like, just why are we even talking about this? It's the right thing to do. This was a torture chamber, forced feedings, beatings. All of these people who largely didn't do anything to the United States and then they go back to their countries, or we drop them off in some random area in the Middle East because we don't care about them. How do you think they feel about the United States now? How do you think they feel? Do you think that they're gonna be warm and fuzzy about us and tell all of their family and friends that, oh, we should be really nice to the United States and their soldiers?
After being tortured.
After being tortured needlessly.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, Guantanamo is not just a question of disastrous human rights and inhumanity, but it's also an investment, right? Just like our prison industrial complex here in the United States. How many of us here know that our taxpayer money, as you just said, Anna, is going to fund these sorts of corrupt, honestly, corrupt appropriations of money that are being used to torture and dehumanize various people? And so I just think it's really important to loop this in with not only the military industrial complex, but also the prison industrial complex here in our country itself.
Oh, absolutely. That is one of my favorite topics to discuss, because with the prison industrial complex, we lose so much. First of all, of course, we lose resources that are desperately needed for, I don't know, things like healthcare, taking care of our own, making sure that people have fulfilled, healthy lives. But on the other hand, there's an incentive. There's an incentive to imprison people because there's a profit motive behind it.
Exactly.
And it's disgusting.
And the second largest employer, apparently, of Americans outside of Walmart are our prison systems. And these are private, again, private contractors and private corporations that our taxpayer money are funding to administer torture and inhumanity.
Yes, Geo Group, one of the largest for-profit prisons and corrections corporation of America, they rebranded themselves recently, and I always forget their name, but nonetheless, they've worked with ALEC, they've worked with lawmakers, they've lobbied so aggressively since the 1980s to pass tough on crime legislation, to pass anti-immigrant legislation, and also to put as many nonviolent drug offenders behind bars as possible. And they specifically target low-level nonviolent offenders because they are the cheapest to imprison, and then that leaves the state and the federal government with expensive prisoners.
I'll just add that this is why in this election with 2020, I'm actually excited because a couple of the progressive candidates in the Democratic Party, we know who I'm talking about here, especially Bernie Sanders, have been making the point about the military-industrial complex. It's one of the first times I've heard the military-industrial complex being voiced this explicitly in a mainstream election in this country. And the fact that we have an opportunity here in this election to challenge that reign of economic and political power and put money and jobs in the service of our country and in the service of humanity.
On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.